Looking for something healthy? Try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Millions of Americans will be traveling this Thanksgiving week. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports.
AAA says nearly 55 million Americans will go somewhere this Thanksgiving holiday, 49 million of them by car. And that is the third highest number of Thanksgiving holiday travelers AAA has seen since they started keeping track in the year 2000. Air travel is projected to be up 8% over last year, but traveling could be complicated by a storm forecast to ramp up starting Tuesday and potentially impacting the upper Midwest and Northeast later in the week.
Gas prices dropping 8 cents over the past 2 weeks. The new average price per gallon in the U.S. is now $3.81.
The low average in our November 18th survey was Houston at $2.93 per regular, and the high was San Francisco Bay at $5.34. Some other metro areas are Cheyenne with $3.26 per gallon, St. Louis with $3.30, Boston with $3.90, and Honolulu at $5.19.
Trilby Lundberg, oil industry analyst and publisher of the Lundberg Survey. The Buffalo Bills victorious despite a snowstorm forcing them to play their home game in Detroit.
The Bills righted the ship at their home away from home on Sunday, downing the Browns 31-23, snapping a 2-game skid. Meanwhile, the only touchdown of the Patriots-Jets game came on a Marcus Jones punt return with 5 seconds to play. New England beats New York for the 14th straight time, and all 4 teams in the AFC East are at least 2 games over 500. Every team in the NFC East has a winning record as well. The Eagles scored late to top the Colts 17-16. The Cowboys keep pace, routing the Vikings 40-3. The Giants were upset by the Lions 31-18, and the Commanders beat the Texans 23-10. Other winners on Sunday, the Saints, Falcons, Raiders, Bengals, and Ravens.
That's Fox's Tim McMaster. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Check out the newest hydro and garden center to hit Guam, Crop King Hydro. We have a huge selection of plant nutrients, soils, hydroponic mediums, organic pest control pumps, plant support, tools, and so much more. Call 635-4769. 635-GROW. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6 at the Dededo Satina Mall, right across from Payless and Paradise Fitness. For whatever you grow, think Crop King Hydro. Crop King Hydro.
Happy day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Start the show every day, every week that way, and you know that. But for newcomers, it puts you on notice that we talk about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, firearms, individual freedom, and liberty. Excuse me. As my friend who's off to Paris this week would say, I have a frog in my throat. Yeah, so if that's what you're interested in, you're in the right place. If it's not what you're interested in, you're really in the right place, because that's exactly what you need to hear. So we start the show every day with the fortune called Zemi Ikotni, which has finally evolved into my commenting on the excuses that the Daily News has for not putting real editorials on its pages. Today, it's Our View. Si Ju'us Ma'ase to Shelton Flores Cantrell for being Guam's voice in climate change discussions. While politics, mindsets, and ideologies continue to debate the realities, causes, and consequences of climate change, the research is clear. The Earth is warming, sea levels are rising, and our environment is changing. It only takes a few moments of watching international news media to see that beachfront homes are being ravaged by destructive storms and tides, displacing untold amounts of people living on low-lying coastal areas. Scroll through your streaming platforms to see the growing volumes of documentaries presenting the evidence, pictures, and first-person stories told by climate refugees forced to clear their ancestral lands to build new lives in foreign countries. Our stance on the climate change debate, root causes, or even names for the global changes being experienced throughout the world no longer matter. Our plan of action in mitigating these changes must take precedent as we tackle these environmental issues on a local level.
Are they kidding? The whole point of the environmental movement is to blame somebody.
Of course, yeah. Coal. You can't write about climate change unless you use the word coal.
The evil, greedy oil companies.
Fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah. Guam is in good hands with young leaders like Mina Flores Cantrell, founder of the innovative small business Numatlo Refillery, and Austin Shelton, director of the university's Guam Center for Sustainability and Sea Grant, and the brother of Senator the brother of Senator Amanda Shelton, yeah. The two Chamorro leaders represented Guam and Micronesia, as well as our voice on the climate change discussion stage. Did you elect him, Jose?
No, I did not.
Nor did I. Nor did I don't think any of the international radio listening audience. Flores and Cantrell attended the 27th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. It's been I wonder on whose nickel, who sent them, who paid for it. It's been inspiring to see the solidarity between all the global communities coming together who are suffering from the exact same issues that we're suffering from in Guam. And thousands of miles away, Shelton was Guam's voice at the Obama Foundation Democracy Forum in New York City.
That's all we need to know.
Yeah. Even though we suffer the wrath of climate change, our island people are leading the way as we build upon our ancient past, innovate in the present, and negotiate the waters to our sustainable future, Shelton stated in a news release issued by UOG. Climate change, sustainable lifestyles, and environmental awareness will be key components of Guam's future progress in the coming decades. What we do now to manage these changes for future generations must become our focus. Si Ju'us Ma'ase to our climate change voices. Thank you for leading the way toward a more sustainable future for Guam. So I guess I better do a sunshine, find out how much it cost us to send Mr. Shelton to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
The point of these editorials is not to blow smoke up people's rear ends.
Yeah.
This is to get critical so that we make these things better. We're not being critical because we hate the environment. It's because this is one thing that happened, but it could have been better. Like, who do we choose to represent us?
Yeah. Yeah, and all we've gotten so far is one paragraph. Even though we suffer the wrath of climate change, our island people are leading the way as we build upon our ancient past. So
what does that mean?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing at all.
Platitudes. Yeah, I suspect he's in the College of Platitudes at UOG. Okay, let's take a peek at the card and see what we've got on the card for today. Of course, we start out with systemic racism. And I've got some players in Public Law 36-34, some folks that just never get it right. And then the first item on the card is David Lujan versus Chief Ignacio, which has appeared before under the title of Jeep Throat. That's the sound effect, yeah. And then we've got Environmental Wackos versus Camp Bloss, Troy and Ken versus MedHealth, and then it's not exactly an item on the card, just something that I feel kind of good about, Helen. Then we've got the House of Representatives versus Gods and Arrows, Puerto Rico Teachers versus Promesa, Sedfree versus Jim Moylan, Jess Lujan versus the Jones Act, Brandon versus the Elephant, and Booth versus the Electorate. And a really full card today. Might not even get past the first item. Okay, I guess just a short touching on systemic racism. The rice is orange. Everybody knows it's red. And if you have the temerity, like Paul Zerzan did, to come out and say, hey, quit calling it red rice, it's orange, you run the risk of being canceled because the agenda says it's red. Who cares about what color it is? Okay, let's take a peek at who violated Public Law 36-34 this time around. And let's see, we've got... We got the Department of Education here. Once again, the obligatory blanket reference to an executive session that they put in every single agenda. And we've got the Board of Trustees at the hospital. Item 1, call to order. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item 3, old business. Item 4, new business. You know what old business they're going to discuss?
I'd like to know.
Me too. Same with new business. And then after that, then they have a long list from 6 all the way down to no, actually it's just 6. And it's things like joint conference and professional support, relative to the appointment of professional medical staff. It looks like new business, but they're not calling it new business. They're calling it board subcommittee report. So somebody at the hospital needs to learn how to do an agenda. And then we've got the notice of regular meeting of the Guam Board of Registration for Professional Engineers, Architects, and Land Surveyors. Item 7 on their agenda, new business. Same old thing. Okay, then we go from there to David Lujan versus Chief Ignacio. And this is a story that ran in the Post. Here's the headline on the story. Defense. Jerry Kitchen crash charges a cover-up for police. Now, it's too bad we don't have a Department of Misinformation here like President Biden wanted to start at the national level. Or too bad we can't do the same thing that this is obviously misinformation. David Lujan saying that there was a cover-up. We know that that couldn't possibly be true, right, Jose?
From?
The very first day that the Jerry Kitchen story ran in the newspaper, the chief of police told us, in fact, I've even got it right here. It's in memorable quotes. I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. Of course, if there were a cover-up, they wouldn't give him the information, would they? That's the point of the cover-up. Defense counsel for the suspected driver of a red Jeep that crashed into Jerry Kitchen last year said his client should not have been charged because it was a cover-up. On Friday afternoon in the Superior Court, the trial of Nikita Uggan, who faces misdemeanor charges of driving while impaired for allegedly driving a red Jeep into Jerry Kitchen restaurant in Tamuning after a night of drinking with friends, began with opening statements from the prosecuting and defense attorneys. Representing the people, Assistant Attorney General Grant Olin started trial by saying someone could have been killed when, after a long night of drinking, Nikita Uggan crashed her Jeep, her red Jeep, into Jerry Kitchen. Olin went on to explain that after Uggan was at a Canyon bar with friends having multiple alcoholic drinks, she drove with her friends in the car and barreled into Jerry Kitchen in the early morning hours of February 25, 2021. The prosecutor then acknowledged a, quote, mess-up by the Guam Police Department in responding to the crash. Instead of conducting a field sobriety breathalyzer test, which would have been normal standard operating procedure, they instead issued her a traffic citation and released her, Olin said, before arguing it doesn't mean Uggan is not guilty of driving while impaired. The guy has got a genius for understatement. The police department messed up. I think it's going to be up to Dave Lujan to spell that out in some detail. In response, Uggan's attorney, David Lujan, told the jury of 6 his client never should have been charged. The evidence is going to show that this is a cover-up. Miss Uggan's charge is a cover-up for 2 police officers, Lujan said, before mentioning one of the officers was Janine Tetlahi, who was off duty in the red Jeep when it crashed into Jerry Kitchen. Uggan was not charged until months after the crash, and in that time, GPD conducted an internal investigation in an attempt to determine if any officers on or off duty may have violated departmental general orders, rules, or regulations, post-file state. The initial investigation into the crash was closed, and Uggan was cited March 2 for the crash. However, GPD conducted a follow-up and forwarded the report to the Office of the Attorney General. According to Uggan's charging documents, a confidential witness told OAG investigators Uggan and her passengers sat in the witness vehicle while police investigated the scene. After the citation, the witness drove them all back to pick up their vehicles from the bar, according to Post files. And there's a lot more to it than that was covered in the other paper that I'll probably pick up tomorrow. But this is, this is the indication of a really, really serious problem, because when the Jerry Kitchen crash occurred, I don't think there was anybody at all who read about it that said, this stinks. This lady crashes, jumps the median, crosses the traffic lane, jumps another curb, smashes into the restaurant and drives all the way to the back wall of the restaurant. And the officer shows up and cites her for imprudent driving.
Is a captain higher than a chief?
A chief is in the police department. The chief is highest. In the Navy, a captain is much higher than a chief.
Okay, because it seems like Chief Ignacio was trying to make it to Captain Renault.
Captain Renault, yeah.
I'm shocked.
Shocked, I tell you. Gambling in Casablanca?
Shocked, I tell you.
Yeah. Captain Renault, you're winning, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, so what happened to Jerry Champion, the cop who was on the scene? And if you put all of the news stories together, one of the stories said that the driver, Nikita Uggan, whoever it was, even attempted to drive the car away, but it was so badly damaged it couldn't be driven.
That's what we heard. Somebody tried to drive it away, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't clear on the camera who it was.
That's right.
Remember, but this is a good story because they're all telling us she's guilty because she was so drunk.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, maybe she was not the driver. Two, there's something else that she still needs to answer to, is why did she go pay her ticket if she was innocent?
Really?
Yeah. So either someone coerced her to pay it, or she thought they're going to get away with it. Something's missing there in answering that question, why she paid it.
Well, obviously, one of the possible explanations is that it's part of the cover-up. She thinks, man, I'm gonna get away with this. I'll pay a traffic ticket in a heartbeat and put this thing behind me. Now, one of the news reports said that it's a violation of police department rules for police officers to be present when a crime is committed. So if Nikita was driving, if she were driving and she's as drunk, she was as drunk as some of the reports said, then just watching her climb in the car and get behind the wheel puts the other officer in jeopardy, because the other officer should have at least left, if not stopped her from doing it, if not arresting her. Because, an off-duty police officer can arrest somebody just like an on-duty police officer. But if Talahi, who was as drunk as Nikita allegedly was, and rides along, I could see why they'd want to cover that up. And then Lujan makes reference to another police officer. Now, we don't know who the other police officer is. I don't think we ever really got firm identifications on who the other passengers were.
Who wrote the report? Abbott and Costello?
Yeah. Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, that Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
Keystone?
Yeah. Laurel and Hardy. And Laurel said to Hardy after the chunky stuff hit the fan, "Now see there, Ollie, what a mess you've gotten us into again." Yeah, so this is going to be Tall Tales. This will be full employment for the host of Tall Tales for a while.
There's another interesting tweak that I've heard is these videos that were taken at the bar or the parking lot. Does it extend to the part where the witness said she took them back to their vehicles that night? It would be interesting to see their condition when they got back into the vehicles.
And drove off again. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if they were drunk when they left, they were probably drunk when they came back. Yeah, and that puts the confidential witness in a little jeopardy. Not much, but some. Okay, I probably got Chief Ignacio on the line here. Let me just check. I got somebody on the line. Yeah, it's Greg. Greg wants to talk. Go ahead, Greg. Tell me about Chief Ignacio.
Well, I got a question to ask you here, Bob. First, let me say happy Thanksgiving to you and the family and the staff of the radio station. This is in similarity to GPD. My question here is, in an accident, Isn't it the responsibility of GPD, after knowing the fact that the individual involved in the accident does not have auto insurance and that the vehicle has not been properly transferred to the second owner? Isn't it GPD's responsibility to impound that vehicle after involved in an accident and not leave it on the side of the road?
Are you talking about the red Jeep here or just another car?
I'm talking about another situation that GPD is all involved in.
If there's no proof of insurance and no current registration, they at least will take the license plates off the car. Whether or not
they're not responsible to impound the vehicle.
I don't know. I suspect probably not. Especially if the car has been in a crash and it's not drivable. So go ahead, Greg.
The reason I bring this up is because with all these accidents that are happening along the road, somehow after the incident, the vehicle are just left on the shoulder of the road. I give you one example, like the one up here next to Los Palmas.
Well,
later on, I found out that the vehicle was never transferred to the second owner, which by law, both the original owner and the buyer must be present when transferring the ownership of the vehicle up at DMV.
I drove from Jigo to Barragata today, and I saw two wrecks sitting on the side of the road. One of them I know had been there, was the third day it was still sitting there. You got a good point, Greg.
You know, and I don't see it feasible for GPD to just leave that vehicle on the side of the road. Back then, they used to impound the vehicle and then charge the owner of the vehicle that's impounded for storage fees.
Well, I suspect that the Midnight Auto Supply folks like to see those cars left beside the road because they're a good source of parts.
That's another thing GPD chief should think about in trying to make collections on situations like that for that department.
Yeah, well,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. You want to say anything about the red Jeep, Greg?
Well, the bottom line is, if you know that you are a peace officer and you know whether you're on duty or off duty, by law, as a peace officer, you must uphold the law. Whether she's guilty or not, the bottom line is she's a peace officer, so she should face her dilemma as well as any other who is involved in a situation under those conditions. Nobody's different.
I couldn't have said it more clearly myself. Thanks a lot for chiming in, Greg.
You take care, and happy holidays to you all.
And same to you, Greg. Let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to environmental wackos versus Camp Bloss.
Farewell, ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
Votes are in and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Lazama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
Congratulations to all of Pika's best nominees.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages, and let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so environmental wackos versus Camp Bloss. Now, I got to lay a little bit of a foundation here before we get into the article that ran in the Daily News. I have a page from a magazine called the International Women's Network Against Militarism. And there's an article there dealing with, goes all the way back to August 17, 2017. And it's about an episode that ran on public radio. And the title is Guam in the Crosshairs, Women Forging Transnational Solidarity for Resistance to Militarism. It was hosted by Dr. Vivian Damas and produced by David Lopez. The episode features interviews with 3 women activists and scholars engaged in building local and transnational solidarity for resistance to U.S. militarism. This is 2017. They also discussed how local actions in response to looming missile threats from North Korea, like the People for Peace rally held August 14, are best viewed as part of a growing local and national transnational solidarity, as it were, solidarity, organizing around decolonization and militarization. So I think you kind of see where this outfit's coming. The International Women's Network Against Militarism. Do you know anybody who's part of that international network? Remember, it said the article said that 3 women are going to be interviewed, right? The first segment features a joint interview with Sabina Flores Paris and Rebecca Garrison, who attended the June International Women's Network Against Militarization as meeting representatives of Protege Latexan. Where have I heard that phrase before? So that's one of the things I want you to know. And then this next page here, Sabina Paris has been an advocate for human rights for her people around various interrelated issues, from safeguarding their rights to water, advocating for Chamorro self-determination, to now trying to prevent the destruction of acres of pristine limestone forest which threaten ancestral sites, the island's northern aquifer, and endangered native species. She helped to organize the 2007 International Women's Network Against Militarization meeting in San Francisco and the 7th conference hosted by Guam in 2009, 3 months before the release of the 10,000-page draft environmental impact statement for Guam and CNMI military relocation. So that's Sabina Paris, and that's her orientation, a prime mover in a group called the International Women's Network Against Militarization. Now, here's something that's really interesting about what the legislature did. We're talking about Bill 464. It's a Clint Rigel project, pretty much a standard Clint Rigel type project. And when it was introduced, it was referred to Talina Nelson. But then for reasons that haven't been explained, it was re-referred to from Sabina, as you were from Talina to Sabina. Now, let me see what conclusions I could draw from that. Where is Talina Nelson's head at? She's a commissioned officer in the National Guard. She's been employed to war zones, right? I have never heard anything that would suggest to me that she's not a patriot. So someone, could it have been the Rules Committee? Someone decided that this bill would be much better heard not by someone like Talina, but by Sabina, who is, for Tall Tales purposes, a classic environmental wacko. And the way it works is this. You start out and you're really against something. And I suspect that the International Women's Network Against Militarism, by their title, would very much like to see everyone who's in the military stripped naked, their uniforms burned in the public square, and a big red M branded on their forehead so they could never have any position of influence again. In other words, these folks don't like the military. And I suspect if you could swear Sabina in and give her some truth serum, she'd tell you, if I could have my way, all the military would disappear. We wouldn't have even a single Coast Guard recruiter left on this island if I had my way. So that's my suspicion, that's the feeling. But instead of attacking it head on, culture, pristine limestone forests.
By proxy.
Sacred places, right? And we know what is a sacred Chamorro place. And we can identify it immediately just as soon as the military said they're interested in doing something with it. It is branded a sacred place.
The other 2/3 of the island are not sacred.
No, only the third that the military's got. So, they'll take off on environmental and cultural attacks as pretexts to achieving the goal that they really want, which is no more military. And generally, you know, looking at the other folks that travel in the same group, in addition to no more military, no more United States. Separatists, these anti-military types, are quite often separatists. So I'm ready to go into the article here, but I got somebody here. It's Kellis who wants to talk about environmental wackos. Go ahead, Kellis.
Hey, Judge. You know, even though I will admit that there is some rivalry between the Air Force and them jarheads, there's a large percentage of the population of this island that is associated with the military one way or another. And if we get rid of all of them, we're looking at more than 2/3 of the island, population-wise.
Right.
Because, you know, I look at my wife's family. So my wife is one of 12. And of the 12, all the boys joined the military, all the girls married military. So that's, you know, a big clan that has to leave.
Good point, Kellis.
And, you know, like I said, you know, I know that you're a Marine, and I don't try my best not to hold that against you. But, you know, because the Air Force is, you know, what's the most important here.
Go on, Kellis. Go on with your story, Kellis.
So, no, the whole thing that I'm getting at is you can't get rid of the active duty military people and the bases and all that without getting rid of a vast majority of the people of Guam. And then what you also have to remember is maybe even a greater majority of the population of Guam, at least the earlier population of Guam, you know, was very supportive of the military. And if they couldn't get in, they supported it without question. I guess it's just been a long enough break between when we were under the occupation of the Japanese that everyone has now forgotten what it's like. And then since everyone is receiving all this help and unwanted and unneeded help from the federal government, and this is all basically comes back to the reason we're getting all this money from the Fed, the Section 30 money and everything is because of the military.
True enough. True enough. So, we talk a lot about the culture But given the reality of the situation, the military is an important part of the culture here.
You know, one of the things I think is so interesting, we're talking about the giant fern up there in Anderson, which without the military would have died decades ago.
Right. So,
and then again, how as soon as the military decides that they want to put up another base or something else, like what Joe is saying, is that is the most sacred piece of land on Guam, and everyone's known about it for the past 15 minutes. Because until the firing range was put up, you know, when they first announced the firing range in Puget, I had never heard of Puget. I've asked, you know, all these Chamorros and people I've known that lived their whole lives have never heard of Puget. But, and then, you know, nobody knows. Nobody knows what the actual ancient culture, language, dance, anything that you want to say, nobody actually knows it. So they can make up anything that they want to, because there's no proof that it did not exist. There's no proof that Puget was not the actual most important village in Guam.
True enough. So if you walk into somebody's house and you want to know if anybody's there, what do you holler out, Kellis? Do you know?
Oi.
Yeah. And if you're on a boat, say on a boat transferring out to a ship in the harbor, and you want to alert the people on board the ship, what are you in the boat? What do you say?
Ahoy!
Ahoy! Yeah. Coincidence or causation?
Well, let me just give you a little story about that hoy. One day I'm up in Anderson after work, and I'm in my fatigue, my BDUs, and I'm picking lumut. So I'm bent over, and I hear a shotgun go off relatively close to where I'm at. So I try to get the hunter's attention, so I yell, "Hoy!" And then I hear they shoot at me again, and I start running through the jungle yelling, "Hoy!" But after I finally got away, I realized that I probably sounded like a pig. I'm bent over, running around in the grass, and then I start yelling "Hoy" at the top of my lungs. So not the best thing, but yes, hoy.
Very good point, Kellis. Thank you very much for chiming in. And even though you're in your Air Force, I think you're a pretty good guy.
For a jarhead, you're not bad yourself.
Thank you, guys.
I also called you the governor, Judge. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay.
I'll call you Senator, Judge, Your Honor, and even a Marine.
Yeah, don't call me governor. I could never live that down. Thanks, Kellis. So Lonnie Salas says, my daughter has giant ferns on her land. Well, the point about the giant ferns is not that we have giant ferns or that whatever. The point is this: there is a scientific name for it, all of which I cannot remember, but I know that the second part of it is Nelsonii. And it was supposed to be a very rare tree here on the island. And the environmental wackos were saying this machine gun range is going to kill it. Well, we find out the Air Force comes forward and said they'd been working with university for 20 years.
There's a big story behind that. You're right.
For 20 years to make sure that tree survived. They were able to take seeds or spore or whatever from the tree and plant saplings in rhoda so that tree will never become extinct. That's the point of the firm. Not that, ferns are nice. That's the reason that we bring up the idea of the ferns. But, of course, the environmental wackos lost interest in it once they found out the true story.
Well, that's the point about, and Kellis was talking about this population here on Guam, is also the population that voted in Sabina Perez. Now, I know her. She's a nice person. I can debate people on differentiating opinions, but this group not just has a different opinion from military, they have contempt for the military.
Right.
And that's the dirty secret people don't know about these environmentalists and these activists, is that they prop up all these other positions that everyone wants to gather around and hug each other about, but they don't recognize the contempt.
Yeah, and so if you take into consideration Kellis's demographics, nobody's going to run for office saying, I'm anti-war. I belong to the International Women's Association Against Militarism. You're going to keep that on the down low. And you're going to talk about, it's hard for anybody to say, no, I want to see the environment go to hell. And the whole Chamorro culture thing is, the first person who gets to use the phrase Chamorro culture wins every argument by default.
Well, Payet, in a way, was perpetuating a Chamorro culture, and that's called illegal dumping, because people did know about that place. Again, I was there when they had to clean up that area. You can't tell me that people respected that area before the military got there.
So this all comes back to Sabina. Sabina is not talking about anti-militarism. She's talking about the environment and the culture. And I thought it was necessary to lay this foundation to develop some understanding where she's coming from. And then someone else's understanding to take it away from Nelson and give it to Paris. Take it away from, the military member and give it to the anti-military gal. So I got one more call coming in before I plunge into the article here. Senator Chris. Tell me more, Senator Chris.
Half a day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Honorable Senator, my favorite talk show host. For a minute there, I thought Calvis was going to steal my title, my introduction.
Well, it's okay. More than 2, 3, 4, it's okay.
That's what I figured. I mean, he went through the lineage. I mean, I would have loved to have called you governor anytime, but real quick on this subject, I had one of the most encouraging parts of running for office during this time was going up to the University of Guam, which is actually one of my favorite forums, and speaking before the students. And the issue of the buildup came up, and the issue of support for the military buildup, and just the issue across the board of federal influence on Guam and the like. And so, of course, you had the variety of answers given the individuals on the panel, Democrat and Republican. But one thing I was able to get through, and I was so happy that I had several students that wanted to speak to me afterwards about it, was I said, no matter where you fall on the side of this issue, the impression I want to leave you with is, don't be fooled about where we live and the influence of our enemies in the Indo-Pacific. And it was commingled with the issue of independence or self-determination, along with the issue of, the presence of military and the expansion. Even an instructor, I was surprised, who I know to be quite liberal, came up to me afterwards and said, that was an effective response. Because my thing was, no matter how you feel and whatever you've been taught or whatever influences you have, please do yourself justice, when we want to use that term justice, by researching what it really means to live where we live in this part of the world. It's beautiful. We can all go to the beach tomorrow. It's one of the, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best place to live on the planet. But don't ever fool yourself on how dangerous and the place that we live, and how dangerous this world is, and what the benefit and the reality outside the economic reality, what the benefit of being part of the United States is, and particularly having the sophistication of the armed forces and all the other intricacies of our armed forces being here on Guam. And I thought I would walk out without getting pulled over, but I was pulled over a number of times, and I was happy that a number of students wanted to engage me on that.
Well, good for you, Chris. And you know, it's a job that all of us have all of the time because the separatists aren't going to rest. They're not going to take a day off. They're going to keep pinging on this with our money, the propaganda that they're putting on TV nowadays with our money, and they're not going to let up.
And they're also not going to let up on exactly one of the other positions I was talking about prior to the election on how even the Miguel families and others were used as pawns in this issue, which was, if you go back to what ignited most of the issue surrounding Anderson and the expansion of the Marine movement to Guam. I know we don't have time for the entire history, but what drove the military consideration for Paget, which was really going to be even good for that side of the island and the families. But what drove them back to the net negative, but what finally drove it back was, in order to have the safety security zone, they had to acquire additional land resources from another agency. And because that agency under Fish and Wildlife was going to relinquish certain acres of property, that's where the fight began. Because the argument was, oh, no, you don't dare. If it's deemed excess, here we are. And you remember how we have our differences on our most famous politician on Guam, MZD, but she had to negotiate that thing in the face of a lot of resistance in terms of ensuring that a government-to-government transfer would happen so that the acreage and the safety zone would be there and available for that transfer. But that would have never been necessary had a reasonable accommodation been made for the best site that was selected in the beginning, but it was deemed absolutely not. So when they went to net negative and actually did what they needed to do on their footprint and needed an additional safety zone, that's where the eruption happened. But the fact is that what prevailed is the transfer of that land and the ability for safety and security for all Guamanians, Chamorros, and whatever you identify as on Guam was secured based on that issue. And I was happy to have at least influenced a few young minds to say, you may think one way, but let me tell you, your safety, security, and your freedom is probably paramount. Maybe not the first thing you're looking at right now, but as you live your life out, you're going to see the value of that.
Good points all, Chris. Thanks again for calling up and setting us straight here in Tall Tales.
Thanks, Your Honor. I look forward to the balance of the show.
All right. So we got to take a short break here for a commercial.
Farewell, ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
Votes are in and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Lazama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
Congratulations to all of Pika's best nominees.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages, and let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Okay, so I'm about ready to get into this article, but I've only got 4 minutes before the big halftime show. And then since today is Monday, we've got the Hope Cristobal screen test on. So rather than start and then have to break it off and come back, I'm going to see what I can find on Facebook here that's pretty interesting. Ishmael Velez in a long post. Ishmael says nation building is the process whereby a society of people with diverse origins, histories, languages, cultures, and religions come together with the boundaries of within the boundaries of a sovereign state with a unified constitutional and legal government, a national public education system, an integrated national economy, shared symbols and values as equals to the work towards eradicating the divisions and injustices of the past, to foster unity, promote a countrywide conscious sense of being proud and committed to the country and open to taking a stance which supports the betterment of the world. Here's the first problem: the diverse origins and cultures and ethnicities on Guam are not allowed to come together. They are not allowed to be looked upon as equals and do not foster unity. Do not foster unity because they're not allowed to come together. They are not allowed to looked upon as equals, and they do not foster unity because the first step in Guam independence is alienating everyone except for one specific ethnicity. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and property, and the pursuit of happiness. For except the separatists do not believe that we're all created equal, because they want to take away everyone else's rights on deciding the best way forward for the island. An interesting approach.
You've heard we have a round of PSAs that are playing on this station.
It's propaganda.
It's incredible. The Ministry of Disinformation, there it is.
Yeah.
They just changed their name.
Absolutely. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to Hope's screen test.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Patrons took down gunmen. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. That's what happened to 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich after he opened fire in a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs late Saturday night. 5 people were killed and at least 25 others were injured. One patron was able to grab a handgun from Aldrich and hit him with it and then pinned him down until police arrived. Fox's Alicia Acuna has more.
According to police, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich entered Club Q just before midnight and began shooting into the LGBTQ nightclub. Police acknowledged the heroism of 2 people who intervened.
At least 2 heroic people inside the club confronted and fought with the suspect and were able to stop the suspect from continuing to kill and harm others.
Investigators determining whether the attack should be prosecuted as a hate crime. The FBI is helping with the investigation. Police in Moscow, Idaho, providing an update on their investigation into the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students.
We do not believe the following individuals are involved in this crime: the 2 surviving roommates, a male seen at the grub truck food vendor downtown, specifically wearing a white hoodie, a private party who provided rides home to Kaylee and Madison in the early morning hour of November 13th.
Roger Lanier, operations captain of the Moscow Police Department. Police said they have cleared the person who received several phone calls from 2 of the victims made just before they were killed. Disney announcing Sunday night that ex-CEO Bob Iger will return as head of the company for 2 years. Bob Chapek, who succeeded Iger in 2020, stepping down from the position. Disney's fiscal 4th quarter results were lower than expected. America is listening to Fox News.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point. Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Loaded now.
With House Speaker Nancy Pelosi not pursuing leadership duties for the next term, questions are rising over potential changes on both sides of the aisle. Fox's Chad Pergram has more from Capitol Hill.
New York Democrat Hakeem Jeffries is poised to succeed Pelosi as the top House Democrat next year. Catherine Clark would become the whip and Pete Aguilar caucus chairman. Jeffries is unopposed. He'd become the first minority to lead a party in Congress. Republicans portray Jeffries as extreme, but political observers disagree with that assessment. They note Jeffries' squabbles with the squad. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is struggling to command enough votes to become Speaker. McCarthy failed to score enough votes to succeed former Speaker John Boehner 7 years ago. But for Republicans, if not McCarthy, who? McCarthy has until early January to round up the votes.
California Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass tells CBS's Face the Nation about her plans regarding crime and homelessness when she begins her term as mayor of Los Angeles.
There's no desire on my part to remove the current police chief. We have a crisis in our city with homelessness as well. 40,000 people are asleep in tents all throughout our city, and 4 or 5 of them pass away every morning. We have multiple crises right now, and so it's my intent on day one to address that issue.
A happy ending in Indiana following a tragic discovery.
Maya was a newborn when she was placed inside a safe haven box earlier this year outside a firehouse in the state's Lake County. But now she has a new family after a Mishawaka police officer, Bruce Feltinsky, and his wife Shelby added baby Maya to their family on Friday, just a day before this year's National Adoption Day. The officer says she's doing well and meeting all her young milestones, and they're grateful for her mother for making a courageous decision.
That's Fox's Shayna Estulin. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Choice Broadcasting has done it again.
Votes are in and we hit the trifecta.
93.3 The Point, Pika's best radio station.
Kyle Mandapat, Pika's best radio personality.
Daryl Lizama, Pika's best DJ.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting say thanks for all your votes and support.
Congratulations to all of Pika's best nominees.
If you're an advertiser, find out what our best can do for you and your business.
Call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages, and let us get your message out to Pika's best listeners with Pika's best broadcasters.
Okay, here we go. I was temporarily distracted there during that great halftime show, but I know it's as good as always, thanks to Jose. So, Jose, let's head for Hollywood and Hope Cristobal's screen test.
Colonizer! You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to yell.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw how sige dulu ni tano di taw-taw-tano how baho bini taw-taw-tano baho bini madahoga baho restaurant na kay gitu bini hago taza restaurant mo bini mo salon nila you need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause this.
Get out of here. When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, partner. Please leave. No, you cannot confront.
What happened, ma'am?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he say?
Telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Hi, Mamalo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos mangasi.
Be safe.
Well, there you have it. Hope Cristobal, the face and voice of the separatist movement. I'm surprised that these TV ads that they're running don't run part of this speech. This would be pretty persuasive.
The author of the commission?
Yeah. She's the chairman of the Chamorro Language Commission. She's the one that created the Chamorro Decolonization Commission. She obviously has her talking points right down pat, that colonialism is bad, colonizers are bad, white men have no right to be on this island. She has more right than they do. It's all very simple for her. And I'm going to keep playing this every Monday because there may be some people who haven't seen it. Everyone should have the chance to see it and recognize the separatist movement for what it really is.
You know, there's a full page ad in one of the papers, probably in both of the papers, that says "break the status quo," and it's very interesting that was not one of the choices being touted.
Of course not,
because there's really nothing. You break that, and you break this island.
Exactly. Because I think that if most people had their druthers, they're not dissatisfied with what we've got today, and that's why we have to have all this neo-Marxist identity politics propaganda. Classic Antonio Gramsci Frankfurt School type approach. You've got to get the people to feel dissatisfied before they're going to be willing to make any change. So you got to do the environmental wacko routine and hope, on and on and on.
You know, I'm being kind of tongue-in-cheek calling them the Ministry of Disinformation, and we see the author right there of the commission. But it's so glaringly stark that I'm amazed that even the Office of Insular Affairs didn't at least edit or look at what was being printed using their money or using our money under their name.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm finally going to get into this article, Environmental Wackos versus Camp Bloss. Title, it ran in the Daily News. Title, Residents urge more review of potential contamination from firing ranges. And it starts right out in a bold type, making this statement. Corrections and clarifications. This article has been updated to properly reflect Joni Kunga, Q-U-N-G-A, Joni Kunga Kerr's statements on page 6. Now, I wonder if Joni Kunga Kerr is really Joni Kanga Kerr. Maybe it's Q-U-E-N-G-A. But it's a correction. So do you have to be accurate in your correction? So let's see what Joni says in paragraph 6 here. We are not blind to the failures, the hundreds of failures of the U.S. military with regard to firing ranges, training methods, and operations nationally and worldwide, she said. Now, they had to make sure they got that into the end of the article, even if it took it all caps, a bold headline to do it, or they didn't even get Joni Kanga Kerr's name right. So here's the article. Residents concerned with the future of Guam's main water source flocked to the Congress building Friday, urging lawmakers to call on federal officials for more environmental review of the military's firing range complex in the north. The legislature has before it a proposal from Senator Clint Rogel to formally request that U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, push for additional review of any impact that the Mason live fire training range complex might have on the quality and quantity of water that can safely be extracted from the northern Guam lens aquifer. Rogel's Resolution 464 also would ask the Armed Services Committees in both Senate and House to pause construction and funding of the ranges, pending further environmental review. Joni Kanga Kerr, spelled right this time, a marine biologist and hazardous waste operations and response trainer, said the island's health was at stake. We are not blind to the failures, the hundreds of failures of the U.S. military with regard to firing ranges, training methods, and operations nationally and worldwide, she said. Water wells at Anderson are already subject to monitoring for levels of toxic solvents, Kerr said, while groundwater in the Marble area is subject to a waiver of technical impracticability with the U.S. EPA for solvent contamination. Basically, what that means is there's no practical way to implement a cleanup. Now, we're talking about Marble. We're not talking about Anderson Air Force Base. Maybe we're talking about Marble Cave, for all I know. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of solvents will be used to clean thousands of weapons anticipated to be used at the firing range, Kerr said. Frankly, it escapes me how the military is going to be able to keep ahead of the camp contamination. Monica Flores with the local group Proteji Litexan Save Retidian played a video of scraped and graded earth at the firing range complex taken earlier this year. Removing all these trees, we're removing the land's way of clearing out toxins, Flores said. Siobhan McManus, an organizer with the youth group Protect Guam Water, took issue with what she said was a lack of relevant data about lead contamination in the 2012 Supplemental Environmental Impact Survey that analyzed the ranges. She cited a 2012 U.S. EPA paper that found a wide range of chemicals